Now, the next scene that we want to design here is some type of banner, but the banner has to incorporate some type of clock in it. So we're going to go for the same look again, using the same textures and same technique. However, when it comes to doing the clock, we'll just set this up a little bit different with some functionality in it so that we'll be able to start and stop this clock how we want. So we're going to come into the S tab here, into our scenes. We're going to create a new scene, and we're going to call this one clock variant equals blue. Again, design-wise, we're going to kind of follow the same steps as before. So I'm going to start by creating a new group here. I'm just going to call this one our main group. I have a snapshot here of what we're actually going to be designing. So I'm going to slide this into our foreground image. While we're here, I'm also going to just put our picture of the stadium in the background so that we have something to reference as far as what it will look like when it's keyed over the screen. So you can see our snapshot here is made up again of a logo. We also have an option here for a place to add a quarter or a period. We have a clock here that's going to count down, a way to swap out some images, and a way to change the teams and the scores here if need be. A couple of things about this is that the clock one will want to set it up with the functionality so that it gives the operator the ability to stop it and start it and to set a new clock whenever we need to. This quarter or period bar here is actually going to use the text BG. So however much we type out, that's how much the Nagi will adjust. So let's go ahead and get started here. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my foreground image. And I'm just going to, again, start by grouping this. So this is going to be my BG, maybe. And I'm going to go into my built-ins and use a Nagi to begin building this. Again, so let's go to the width, maybe about 550. I'm going to set my height roughly to about 45, let's say. And I'm going to take my bevels down of each corner here to 0. I'm going to set the stretch to 60 again. I'm going to go ahead and move my main group here near the top. So I'll turn on my title area and safe area to see where the safe area is here. And I'll just move this up along those lines there. I'm going to go into my server and I'm just going to drag a blue material onto my first Nagi. Maybe I'll copy this once, bring it up in Z position, and maybe we'll just add a different image to it just to give it a little bit more depth. So I'm just going to go ahead and drop this gradient on it, and I'm going to decrease the height a little bit and the width a little bit too as well. Now I know I want to have some type of texture on here, so let's just copy this Nagi again. I'm going to bring it forward another 0.1 or 2 by holding down Control and adjusting the Z position. I'm going to drag this hexagon image down onto it and keep it at linear, and I'm going to scale this down as well. Now I might use my alpha here to alpha that down, so I'll just drag the alpha onto that container and drag that down as well. I'm going to go ahead and close that. I'm going to start a new group here. These new groups that I'm going to call are just going to be some stripes here to help highlight or add some design elements to it. So again, I'm going to add a Nagi. Instead of dragging a brand new Nagi down, I'm just going to copy one of these that we did before. So I'm going to go ahead and hold down Control, click and drag this Nagi down. To see it, I'm just going to get rid of that blue material. I'm going to stretch or adjust the height of it down very thin, maybe to like 5 or 10. I'm going to move the position of it down and move the position left a little bit too. So we can place it wherever we want when we're done as far as design wise go. The important thing is though is getting it to loop the texture here. So I'm going to drag the new split down onto this. I'm going to go into the image editor, set the single to scaling, set the single scaling X here down, and we can adjust that to whoever we want. I'm going to adjust the rotation here roughly to about 30 or 34. I think it pretty much lines up with our angle. And to make it some soft edges, again, I'm going to drag this gradient down, and I'm going to drag the Nagi as a subcontainer of that gradient. I'm going to click on the gradient image and go into the image editor, turn inheritable on, change my unit here to 2, and then change the position and or rotation scaling of this gradient image. So I'm going to change the rotation to 90. I'm going to scale this out again, very wide, and I'm just going to adjust the position here to however I want it. So here you can see it starts disappearing off of the edge, something like that. I'll just keep it like that. I'm just going to shimmy this Nagi over a little bit to the same width as the other ones. If we want to add a material to it as well, I'm just going to throw a blue material on it, maybe a light blue, to see how that looks. Okay, good enough. And before I actually copy that, what I'm going to do is just animate this so that the animation is there when we already copy it. I'm going to come into the image editor and I'm going to move our position of this image left or right and set keyframes for it. So first, to start, I'm just going to adjust this to a place where I have a good starting point. I'm going to hit set keyframe and then just move it a little further down the line here, or on the X position here, to a good endpoint where you won't notice it jump or repeat. So I'm going to go ahead and hit set keyframe. I'm going to go into the stage and I'm going to click between these keyframes to turn on the loop button, and I'm going to set that to infinity. I'm going to click on the keyframe and set both the beginning and the end keyframe to linear. Now I have one animation in here. It's in my default director. I'm going to go ahead and just create a new director a while and call this one loop. And I'm going to throw this animation that we just made into that loop director. Now I'm going to go ahead and just copy this container and I'm going to position this near the top, and now we have two containers here that already have an animation that are looping. So if I go into our scene settings and check our other example here and what we need, so we still need the logo. So let's go ahead and bring the logo on, or build the logo. So I'm just going to use the Nagi here again to start building this, and maybe we'll just build it once and kind of copy the Nagi. So I'll go into my server, I'm going to drag a blue image onto it. I'm also going to go into the images, and let's use this gradient image just to give it a little bit more depth. I'm going to go into the Nagi. I'm going to take the bevels down to 0 each corner and stretch it to 60. I'm going to move the height down to roughly around 65 or so. I'm going to reposition this and move the position Z up. So here I have a position for a logo. I'm going to copy this Nagi, and maybe we'll add the hexagon texture to it instead of that gradient. And we'll just position this up again, and we'll go into the texture position. We'll scale this down on the locked axis. And if you don't like the hard edges, again, we can certainly change that. So I can drag the gradient down. I can throw the Nagi as a subcontainer and then change my image here to inheritable. And you can see how that takes on some of the depth or the gradient image. So let's adjust these down a little bit just to offset a little bit. And if we want to quickly or need to quickly adjust the color of the backplate, we can do that too by clicking on the material and making the adjustments right there. Now I'm missing my logo, so I'm just going to copy this Nagi here up into our group. I'm going to bring this forward in Z position again. I'm going to get rid of that texture on it. I'm going to get rid of that material on it. I'm going to drag the logo down onto that Nagi. I'm going to go into the image editor, scale the logo down, set my wrap here to clamp, and just reposition this logo however I need be. Good enough for right now. I'm going to leave it as is and move on. So we also need a bar that comes out here, which will give us an area to display our quarters or periods or whatever information you want to put in there. I'm just going to rename this group logo. Let's call this one quarter or something so we know what's going in there. Again, I'm going to start with the Nagi, so I'm just going to drag a Nagi down, adjust the height here roughly to about 45, let's say. I'm going to take each corner down to 0 again and change the stretch to 60. Let's move it up in Z position so that we can actually see it, and we'll position it over. I'm going to adjust the height again. I roughly want it to maybe be something like that. I'm going to go into the server. I'm going to use this white box here to color it or give it some texture. So I'm going to click on the white box to go into the image editor. I'm just going to set the mapping here to vertex, and you can see how that affects the image now. I'm going to go ahead and add the font to this a while, just because we're going to use a plugin here to make some adjustments. So I'm going to use this Helvetica font. I'm just going to slide this down as part of that group. I'm going to move the Z position up so that we can see it. We go into the font editor here, and let's type in something like second quarter or something like that. I'm going to change the type to texture. I'm going to scale it down and reposition it over here and bring the Z position up. I'm also dropping a material on it, whichever color you want, black or a dark blue. I'm just going to use black for right now. I'm going to scale it down a little bit. I don't want it that big, so maybe something roughly around that size or so. And this is probably where it should sit. Now I'm going to use a new plugin here called TextBG. I'm going to go into my container plugins, go into the tools folder, and use this TextBG here. I'm going to drag this onto my Nagi, and so you can see immediately when we put that on there how it adjusted the height of this. And we need to come into the TextBG and adjust this. So first, on our direction, we want not the XY but just the X. So I'm going to go ahead and click on X first. And I'm going to go back into the Nagi and readjust the height. Since when we dragged that TextBG on there, it adjusted it. I'm going to go ahead and just reposition this a little bit as such. And just make sure your Z position is where you want it. We don't want it in front of the logo. We may want it in back of the one plate of the logo or the other logo. So Z position, very important. I'm going to go back into my TextBG. I have my direction set to X. Here it says text container, the previous, parent, next, or other. Well, in this case, it's okay because our previous container is actually this text, which we'll go ahead and rename. So let's call this like quarter or period or whatever you want. If you're not sure about your text container, the easiest thing to do is switch this to other and then change or drag your text container into the other container. This example, I'm just going to leave it as previous. All right, so when we come back into our text here and we start typing, you can see how this Nagi grows with however much we type in. So if we type in less or more, it will grow or shrink accordingly. So if we only have like first period, it won't be as long, but if you change it to a longer string, such as third quarter, it's going to be a little bit longer, and whatever we type in there, basically, that Nagi is going to grow. So let's just keep it at that for right now. Now we also need a clock, so I'm going to drag a new group down here and rename this new group to clock or time or whatever you want. I'm going to grab a font, go into the server here, grab into the F tab, and grab the font that I want to use for the clock. So I'm going to slide this down. I'm going to bring it up in Z position, go into the font editor, change it to text. Let's scale this down a little bit and reposition it somewhere right around here. I'm going to go into the text editor again. I'm going to delete that text. I'm going to go into this tab here that says clock. I turn on the clock button by hitting this little gray button here to the left where it says clock. And when we do that, we get this little icon here, and the clock down here turns into a numerical symbol. First, we have this box here, so we can change how we want the setting to be. Hours, minutes, seconds, however we want. I'm going to change it to mm.ss, which is minutes and seconds. Now we have this option here for time, and this time is actually in seconds. So when we type in our clock here, we can set how many we want. It's by seconds. So if I type in 1800, it equals 30. We can set it to up or down, and we're going to leave that as is for the moment. Now we're going to add a couple more things. So we need a home team and a visitor team. So let's make one more group here. We'll call this home, and we'll make one more group here called visitor. And we're going to throw those respective designs into these groups. So let's go back into our built-ins. I'm going to grab another Nagi here, slide it down as part of the home group. I'm going to adjust the Z position, bring it out 1 or 2. I'm going to go into the Nagi, immediately take my bevels down to 0 and set the stretch to 60. The height, roughly, I'm going to take about the same size as my blue bar. The width, maybe a little bit less, something like that. I'm going to readjust this over here, roughly in that position. I'm going to go ahead into the server. I'm just going to go grab a material and drop that down. Maybe I'll just use black for that. I'm going to copy that Nagi. I'm going to swap out that black material with a blue material, maybe a light blue, so that we'll be able to see it even better. I'm going to go into the Nagi. I'm going to change the geometry type from area to outline, just to stroke it a little bit. And again, if you're not too thrilled with the color, simply swap that out. I'm going to copy this Nagi once more. I'm going to get rid of that white. I'm going to change the geometry type back to area, and let's move it up in Z position a little bit. And I'm going to go grab a logo. So let's go into our images here and throw our first logo into it. Maybe this is the home team's logo. I can scale this down to make it fit within that area. So let's go ahead and just group this backplate all together, and you can call it like home BG or something like that, home logo, or whichever you want. We'll close that off for a second. We need some text in here, so I'm going to go into the server, into the font tab, and we're just going to use a font here to create the home team. So we'll go into the basic, and let's give it like 3 syllables. And we'll bring that forward in Z position, scale it down, and reposition it. So however big or small you want to make it, you can. We'll change the text here to texture. Move it over there. I'm going to call this one team name, and I'm just going to copy that, and we're going to rename this one team score. I'm going to click on that text, and I'm just going to change that to 1. I'm going to reposition that over to the right of it as well. I'm going to go into the materials here, and maybe we'll just make this one yellow so that it stands out a little bit more. Okay, so I have that home. Easiest thing that we could have done was just to copy that home rather than creating that visitor container from the get-go. So I just did that. I'm going to rename my home to visitor here, and what we can do is just kind of slide this right. Now you can see we're kind of running out of room here, so a couple of things you can do obviously is just make our background Nagis a little bit wider. So we can come into our first background here, and we'll just stretch this out maybe to like 600. We'll go a little bit further, maybe to about 635 it looks like, and we can just do that for each one of these. And you can see now that everything is fitting on there. So we'll need to do that with our stripes too. If you want, you can spread them out or just move these over a little bit. I think we'll just try to move them over since it is hidden by the logo and it fades off a little bit too. These you can pretty much adjust anywhere, so I'm just going to slide the top one over a little bit further. And again, if you need to see a little bit better, if your bounding box is on or title area or a safe area is on, you can change that. Okay, so roughly I think this is where we want it, and we'll be able to set this up so that we can change these things within Trio. So let's go ahead and save this. Our next step is actually going to be to animate this.